He's stealing it?
Worse, he's borrowing it.
What's wrong with that?
We can't afford to pay it back, that's what's wrong with it.
The Iron Throne was never taken by a dragon or an army. It was taken by a pen, a ledger, and two men who nobody trusted. Here is the thing about Game of Thrones that most people never stop to think about. When the dust settled and the Lannister regime collapsed, everyone pointed at the battles. At Blackwater, at the Red Wedding, at the dragons flying over King's Landing. But the war was already over long before any of that. It was over the moment Tyrion Lannister sat down and opened Littlefinger's books. What he found in those books set off a chain reaction that destroyed the most powerful family in Westeros. And the man who knew exactly what Tyrion would find, who practically pushed him toward those ledgers, was Varys. This is not a theory about magic or prophecy. This is a theory about money. And it is the most dangerous kind of story in any era, any kingdom, any world. The one about who controls the gold.
If only the Master of Coin had such power.
If only.
Let's begin with Littlefinger, since you cannot truly comprehend what Varys and Tyrion did without first understanding what Littlefinger created. When Ned Stark arrived at King's Landing in the first book and first season, he was invited to his very first small council meeting and got the worst welcome gift. The crown, he was told, owed more than 6 million gold dragons in debt. 6 million. To put that in perspective, one of the biggest tournaments in Robert's reign, the Tourney of the Hand, cost around 100,000 gold dragons in prize money alone. Robert would have needed to host something like 60 of those tournaments just to account for that level of debt through spending alone. And as Tywin himself noted in both the books and the show, the gross income of the crown had grown to about 10 times what it was under the Mad King. So where did all that money go? Littlefinger is the answer. And even in the show, Tyrion figures this out almost immediately. In Season 3, Episode 3, when Tyrion first gets handed the Master of Coin role and starts going through the ledgers, he tells Bronn the truth plainly. Littlefinger was not a financial genius. He was a borrower. In the books, Baelish's accounting records are deliberately obfuscated, intentionally complex, and nearly impossible to untangle. Tyrion, who is one of the sharpest minds in the series, sits with those books in a storm of swords and comes away deeply unsettled. He finds Littlefinger's investments highly suspicious and suspects that significant sums have been siphoned off in ways that cannot be traced. And if you look at the full picture in the books, that suspicion holds up. Littlefinger ran a scheme that worked roughly like this. He borrowed money from places like the Iron Bank of Braavos, made it look like he was filling the treasury, and quietly funneled portions of crown revenue into his own private holdings, his brothels, his trading ventures in the Vale, his personal wealth. He then used his deliberately tangled accounting to make it impossible to trace. The books confirm that the records Tyrion inherits are so complex that no one besides Littlefinger himself could fully read them. That is not competence. That is a cover-up. And here is the part that matters for everything that follows. Littlefinger did not create this chaos by accident. He needed the crown to be dependent on him. A financially stable kingdom does not need Peter Baelish. A drowning kingdom will take whatever lifeline he throws it. The debt was his weapon. The chaos was his ladder, as he famously said himself. But Varys saw the ladder, and Varys knew that the same weapon could be turned around. Now, Varys and Tyrion are not friends. Not really. In the books, their relationship is strictly transactional. They respect each other. They need each other. But they are not warm. What they are, is useful to one another. In A Clash of Kings, Tyrion arrives in King's Landing as acting hand of the king while Tywin is still fighting the Starks in the field. Varys is already there, watching, and one of the very first things he does is make himself indispensable to Tyrion. He had already discovered that Tyrion had smuggled Shae into the city against Tywin's orders, which he uses not as a threat but as a demonstration of how much he knows, and how useful that knowledge can be. He starts feeding information to Tyrion's spy network. He makes Tyrion feel like he has an ally. But Varys is always playing a longer game. At this point in the story, Varys has already been secretly working for years to destabilize the Lannister hold on the throne and eventually restore the Targaryens. We know this from the epilogue of A Dance with Dragons, when Varys personally kills Grand Maester Pycelle and mortally wounds Kevan Lannister. He explains to the dying Kevan that Kevan had been doing too good a job stabilizing the kingdom. The Lannisters were becoming too strong again. Varys needed them weak. He needed the board cleared. So think about what it means that Varys was standing right next to Tyrion when Tyrion was discovering the full extent of the crown's financial ruin. Varys knew about Littlefinger's books. His little birds were everywhere in the Red Keep, including in the treasury. He absolutely knew the state of the crown's finances before Tyrion did. And when Tyrion started pulling on those threads, Varys did not warn him off. He helped. He kept the information flowing. He let Tyrion see exactly how bad it was. And Tyrion, once he understood what he was dealing with, made a critical choice. He did not try to fix it quietly. He let the situation get worse. Here is what Tyrion's actual tenure as Master of Coin looked like, and why it reads so differently when you understand the context. It is worth being precise about the timeline, because the show compresses it. In the books, Tyrion serves as Hand of the King throughout A Clash of Kings, the entire span of the second book. He fights the Battle of Blackwater as Hand, gets gravely wounded, and wakes up to find Tywin has swept in and taken the position away from him. Only then, in A Storm of Swords, does Tywin hand him the Master of Coin role as what Tyrion himself recognizes is not a reward but a punishment. It is the impossible job of cleaning up the financial mess that Littlefinger engineered and that Robert's Wars accelerated. The crown's debt when Tyrion inherits the ledgers is catastrophic. Millions owed to House Lannister. Millions more owed to the Iron Bank of Braavos, to House Tyrell, to the Faith of the Seven, and to Tyroshi trading cartels. In A Storm of Swords, Tyrion sits with those ledgers and finds them deeply suspicious. He considers Littlefinger's investments questionable. He notes that some of the crown's debtors have just been executed as antler men, meaning the money owed back to the crown is likely gone forever. The numbers do not add up because they were never meant to add up. Littlefinger built a system that only Littlefinger could read. Tyrion looks at all of this and does not make any serious attempt to reduce the principal debt or renegotiate terms with the Iron Bank. What he does is keep spending. The royal wedding requires it, he argues. Managing the Tyrell alliance costs money the crown does not have. And every gold dragon spent on top of the existing debt pushes the Iron Bank closer and closer to the edge. Here is the thing about the Iron Bank of Braavos. Tywin explains it to Cersei in Season 4 of the show, and it is just as true in the books. The Iron Bank does not lose. When a debtor cannot pay, the bank does not forgive. It finds their enemies and funds them instead. It is not a threat. It is their established business practice. In the show, Stannis and Davos travel to Braavos in Season 4, while Tywin is still alive, and secure a loan specifically because the Lannisters look like a bad investment. In the books the mechanics are different and still playing out, but the pressure from the Iron Bank on the crown's finances is just as severe. By a feast for crows, the crown's treasurer Harys Swyft has personally travelled to Braavos to try to negotiate with the bank, and the results are not encouraging. Kevan Lannister, in his final chapter, worries openly that they will have no choice but to start paying the crown's debts with Lannister private gold, which would mean the family's own personal wealth becoming collateral for the regime's failures. That is the endgame of everything Littlefinger started. But the acceleration of that endgame, the thing that pushed the Lannisters to the point of no recovery, happened during Tyrion's time handling the books. Now, the show introduced a detail in Season 4 that the books do not actually support. The idea that the Lannister gold mines had literally run dry. Tywin tells Cersei privately that the mines have been empty for 3 years. George R.R. Martin himself said at a convention in 2014 that in the books, the Lannister mines are not empty, and are in fact still considered among the best in the world. What the books tell us is more nuanced and in some ways more damning. The problem was not that the gold ran out. The problem was that the crown had been spending gold faster than it could ever be produced, and the Iron Throne's debts had grown so enormous that even Lannister wealth, the greatest private fortune in Westeros, could no longer be cleanly separated from the crown's collapse. The show simplified this for dramatic effect. But the underlying truth is the same. The Lannister name no longer had the financial backing to sustain what it was promising. Varys knew this. It is inconceivable that a man with spies in every corner of Westeros did not understand the gap between the Lannister reputation and the Lannister reality. And if Varys knew it, Tyrion figured it out too. He had access to the same ledgers, the same numbers, the same treasury reports. In A Storm of Swords, Tyrion is not optimistic about the crown's finances. He is managing decline. Now let's talk about the Tyrell alliance, because this is where things get particularly interesting. When Tywin arranges for Joffrey to marry Margaery Tyrell, it is presented as a financial and military lifeline. The Tyrells are the richest family in Westeros. The breadbasket of the Seven Kingdoms sits in the Reach. Their gold supplements the strained crown coffers. Their grain feeds King's Landing. The alliance looks like salvation. But Varys, who is quietly sowing discord between the Lannisters and the Tyrells in the books, understands that alliances built on debt and desperation are not foundations. They are duct tape.
We'll pay for half the expenses, and the celebrations will go on as planned. Is that sufficient?
In the show, when Tyrion meets with Olenna Tyrell to discuss the wedding costs, she drives a hard bargain and forces the crown to share the expense. She is sharp enough to see the crown's financial weakness and uses it. The Tyrells are owed money by the crown, just like everyone else. Every time the crown has to lean on Tyrell gold, it becomes more dependent and less sovereign. The Lannisters go from rulers to borrowers even within their own alliance. The dynamic that makes Tywin terrifying, his ability to operate from a position of absolute financial and political strength, erodes with every loan, every concession made to keep the Tyrells happy. Tyrion understood this. In his own way, he worked around it, not through it. He was not trying to build a stable Lannister dynasty. He was never that invested in the institution. He was managing a collapsing structure while simultaneously being used and despised by that same structure, by Joffrey who humiliated him publicly, by Cersei who blamed him for everything, by Tywin who treated him as a punishment and a tool. Why would a man in that position fight to save the machine? He might not have actively wanted it to burn, but he had no particular reason to exhaust himself stopping the fire. The clearest evidence that Varys was playing a different game the entire time comes at the very end of A Dance with Dragons. After everything, after Tyrion has killed Tywin and fled across the narrow sea, Varys returns to King's Landing in disguise. He is done waiting, whose loyalty to the Lannisters was total. He shoots Kevan Lannister with a crossbow, and as Kevan lies dying, Varys explains himself. He says Kevan has been doing too good a job. He has been repairing the damage, healing the wounds, mending the relationships between the Lannisters and the Tyrells that Cersei's paranoia had torn apart, stabilizing the kingdom. And Varys cannot allow that. Everything Varys did, every piece of information he shared or withheld, every alliance he helped form or quietly undermined, was pointed at this goal. A Targaryen on the throne, the Lannisters destroyed, the board cleared, and the financial collapse of the Iron Throne was one of the most powerful tools in that campaign. Because an army can be beaten by another army, but a kingdom drowning in debt, with a bank funding its enemies and its allies demanding repayment, with its treasury unable to cover even a fraction of what it owes, that kingdom falls from the inside. No siege required. So here is the full picture, and it is worth sitting with for a moment. Littlefinger spent years building a financial trap, borrowing the crown into catastrophic debt, obfuscating the records, and making himself indispensable as the only person who could navigate the chaos he created. His goal was personal power. Control the money, control the men who need the money, eventually control the throne. Varys watched all of this from the beginning. He had been in the Red Keep since the Mad King's reign. He watched Littlefinger build the trap, and he recognized that the trap could be repurposed. When Tyrion was handed the Master of Coin role in A Storm of Swords, it was officially a demotion from Tywin, a way to dump an impossible problem onto a son he despised after stripping him of real power. But from Varys' perspective, it was an opportunity. Tyrion was smart enough to understand what the ledgers meant. Tyrion was disillusioned enough with the Lannister regime to not feel a burning urgency to save it. And Tyrion trusted Varys more than almost anyone else at court. The two of them, in their uneasy transactional alliance, with their private information sharing and their shared contempt for the court they served, did not save the crown's finances. They managed its decline. They understood that the Iron Bank would eventually stop lending and start backing rivals. They understood that the gap between the Lannister reputation and the reality of the crown's finances was not a problem that could be quietly fixed. They understood that every war, every wedding, every political bribe pushed the kingdom closer to the edge. And neither of them pulled it back. Whether that was active sabotage or simply two cynical, self-interested survivors choosing not to exhaust themselves for a regime that would have happily discarded them, the effect was the same. The Lannister hold on the Iron Throne was financially hollowed out from within. By the time Daenerys Targaryen arrived in Westeros with dragons and armies, she was not conquering a strong kingdom. She was collecting the ruins of one that had been crumbling for years. The throne was already lost. It was lost in the ledgers. It was lost in the silence of two men who understood exactly what those numbers meant and decided, for their own very different reasons, not to save the people sitting on top of them. Varys once said that he serves the realm. Not the king. The realm. And it is easy to dismiss that as a politician's excuse, a convenient piece of self-justification. But if you read his actions across the full series, in the books especially, there is a consistency to it. He did not protect Joffrey. He did not protect Cersei. He did not protect Tywin, the man who made the Lannister name synonymous with power for a generation. He protected the conditions that he believed would produce a better ruler. Whether his chosen candidate, Aegon in the books or Daenerys depending on which version you follow, was actually better is a separate debate. But the logic of his actions is coherent. Tyrion, for his part, ends up exactly where Varys always intended him to be. In Daenerys' service, advising a Targaryen claimant, applying his intelligence to the project of replacing the regime he was born into. Two outsiders. A eunuch who was never truly accepted by the court he served. A dwarf who was despised by his own father and treated as a prop by the family he saved at Blackwater. Both of them brilliant. Both of them easy to underestimate, and that underestimation was the most valuable thing they had. They did not need armies. They had ledgers and information. And in a kingdom built on borrowed gold and borrowed time, that was more than enough. If you made it this far, you already know that Game of Thrones rewards the people who pay attention to the details the show and the books drop quietly in the background. The finances of Westeros are not background noise. They are the skeleton of the entire story. The wars are fought with gold. The alliances are bought with gold. The throne is held or lost by whoever controls the flow of gold. Littlefinger understood that first. Varys saw it and waited. Tyrion inherited the mess, and consciously or not, let it run its course. The result was not just the fall of House Lannister. It was the complete reset of the entire political order of Westeros. And it happened, at least partly, because two of the most underestimated men in King's Landing looked at the same set of impossible numbers and decided that the most powerful move was to do absolutely nothing. If you have thoughts on this, whether you think the sabotage was intentional or situational, whether you think Varys was playing Tyrion or genuinely working alongside him, drop it in the comments. That argument is still going in the book's community, and it is one of the most interesting ones in the entire fandom. And if you are new here and this is the kind of deep breakdown you want more of, subscribe. New video coming soon.